Alright guys, we are going to be reacting to the life after the war, how Russia rebuilt Mariupol into a powerful and stunning city. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Let's get to 60,000 subscribers and also 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Let's jump in. Wow. Okay. I think this is in the south on the mainland of Ukraine, right?
Mariupol is not just another city on the coast of the Sea of Azov. For Russia, it has long been one of the most important strategic points in southern Ukraine. Before the war, the city was a major industrial center, home to massive steel plants, a deep water port, and a key logistics corridor connecting Donbas, Crimea, and southern Russia. But over the years, Mariupol also became one of Ukraine's most heavily fortified military strongholds. Large residential districts were converted into defensive positions, industrial zones were transformed into military bases, and underground infrastructure was adapted for long-term urban warfare. From Moscow's perspective, as long as Mariupol remained under Ukrainian control, Russia's southern security corridor would remain permanently exposed. When Russia launched its military operation in February 2022, Mariupol immediately became a top strategic priority. The city had been prepared for a long siege. Ukrainian forces had turned factories, ports, apartment blocks, and underground facilities into defensive positions. The battle quickly evolved into one of the most intense urban confrontations of the war. Russian forces surrounded the city, cutting supply routes and isolating Ukrainian units. Street by street, block by block, Russian troops advanced through dense urban terrain under constant fire. The fighting concentrated around the port, residential districts, and the massive Azovstal steel complex, which had been converted into a fortified military zone. After nearly 3 months of continuous fighting, the remaining Ukrainian forces surrendered at Azovstal in May 2022. Russia declared full control of Mariupol. From the Russian point of view, this was not simply the capture of a city, but the securing of the entire Sea of Azov coastline and the establishment of a permanent land corridor between Russia and Crimea. Strategically, Mariupol marked a turning point in the southern theater of the war. Moscow framed the operation not as a conquest, but as a liberation. Russian officials stated that the city had been transformed into a NATO-supported military fortress and that civilian infrastructure had been systematically militarized.
That's interesting. I don't know how.
In Russian media, Mariupol was presented as a city freed from armed formations and returned to Russian protection. The fall of Mariupol became a symbol of Russia's ability to conduct large-scale urban operations and secure long-term territorial control.
Wow.
When the fighting ended, the city was heavily damaged. Entire districts were destroyed, industrial facilities were crippled, and critical infrastructure had collapsed. Electricity grids, water systems, heating networks, hospitals, and schools required massive reconstruction. For Moscow, the challenge was clear. If Mariupol was to become a permanent part of Russia's strategic system in the south, the city could not remain in ruins. It had to be rebuilt, modernized, and fully integrated into Russia's economic and administrative structure. Within months, Mariupol was declared a federal reconstruction priority. The Kremlin placed the city under a national development program, making it one of the largest urban rebuilding projects in modern Russian history.
Wow.
Russian ministries, state construction companies, military engineers, and regional administrations were mobilized.
Wow.
Rubble was cleared, infrastructure networks were restored, and emergency housing was built for families who had lost their homes.
Incredible.
According to Russian administrative sources, reconstruction funding was organized in phases. The first stage focused on stabilization and emergency recovery, with more than 100 billion rubles allocated for clearing debris, restoring electricity and water, reopening hospitals, repairing roads, and building temporary housing. The second phase, running through the mid-2020s, includes large residential complexes, permanent schools and hospitals, industrial restoration, port modernization, and transportation infrastructure.
Wow.
In total, the reconstruction program is estimated at 400 to 500 billion rubles, making Mariupol the largest rebuilding project Russia has undertaken since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Wow, that's impressive, guys. That is impressive indeed, you know?
Today, Mariupol is no longer a battlefield. Shops are open, markets operate, public transport runs, schools teach, and hospitals treat patients.
Wow.
New apartment complexes have risen in districts that were once reduced to rubble. Power grids and water pumping stations have been restored. Wow. The city's heating system now operates again during winter. Russian doctors, engineers, and teachers have been deployed to support public services. The port has resumed operations, and industrial facilities are gradually returning to production. In the years following the battle, Mariupol has steadily moved away from its image as a war-torn city and toward a functioning urban center once again.
Yeah, these people are not going back. No. These people are not going back to Ukraine. These people are not going back to Ukraine. Look at that. I've seen some before and after picture. Before they were Ukraine territory, and now it's not even close. It's not even close, guys.
Entire neighborhoods that were once piles of rubble now feature newly built residential blocks, playgrounds, and public spaces. Construction crews work across the city every day, restoring streets, utilities, and public buildings. The visual transformation is visible from the main avenues to the port district, where cranes and cargo ships have returned to regular operation. For Russia, the rebuilding of Mariupol is meant to demonstrate that the city is not frozen in war, but moving forward. Daily life is not yet what it was before the war, but the basic structure of a functioning city has returned. People go to work, children attend school, and public services operate across most districts. For many residents who stayed, stability and normal life have become the main priority. Thousands of locals are now employed in reconstruction projects, public services, logistics, and port operations. Social assistance programs provide pensions, food aid, and financial support to vulnerable families. Mariupol is now fully integrated into Russia's administrative system. Russian passports are issued, Russian banks operate in the city, the ruble is the official currency, and Russian healthcare and insurance systems are in place. Telecommunications, postal services, and public administration now operate under Russian federal standards. From Moscow's point of view, Mariupol is no longer a war zone. It is a developing Russian city. The port remains central to Russia's long-term vision. Mariupol is planned as a logistics hub for southern Russia, a major trade gateway on the Sea of Azov, and a future industrial export center. Steel plants are being restored, ship repair facilities are being modernized, and rail connections are being expanded. The goal is to turn Mariupol into one of the economic engines of southern Russia. Ukraine continues to claim the city as its territory, while the United States and NATO refuse to recognize Russian sovereignty over Mariupol. Sanctions remain in place, and Western governments describe the reconstruction as an attempt to normalize Russian control. However, from a military and geopolitical standpoint, Russia has secured the Azov coastline and established a fortified southern corridor that now forms a permanent part of its defense system.
At that point,
During the Soviet era, Mariupol was one of the most powerful industrial cities in the south, producing steel for the entire Union and serving as a key maritime gateway. Today, Russia aims to rebuild that legacy in a modern form, with new infrastructure, modern housing, revitalized industry, and a fully restored port economy. The vision is clear. Mariupol is being prepared to become one of the main economic engines of southern Russia and the flagship city of the Sea of Azov region. Mariupol has become one of the most important cities in Russia's southern strategy. What was once a fortified battlefield is now being transformed into a modern port, industrial center, and logistics hub.
Wow.
The battle for Mariupol reshaped the military map of the region. The rebuilding of Mariupol is shaping its future. Through large-scale reconstruction, infrastructure investment, and economic development, Russia is turning the city into a permanent pillar of its southern corridor linking Donbass, Crimea, and mainland Russia. The city is being prepared not just for recovery, but for decades of growth. From Russia's point of view, Mariupol is no longer defined by war. It is defined by stability, development, and long-term security. Mariupol's story is not only a story of war, it is a story of transformation. A city that once stood at the center of a brutal urban battlefield is now becoming a symbol of Russia's southern future. Where there was once destruction, there is now construction. Where there was once chaos, there is now order. Where there was once uncertainty, there is
one thing that you cannot negate. It's the fact that under Russian control, they have a more modern lifestyle.
now long-term planning.
Yeah.
For Russia, Mariupol is more than a victory. It is a commitment to secure the Sea of Azov, to rebuild what was destroyed, and to shape a new strategic reality in the south. This is the new Mariupol. Not a city of ruins, but a city of resolve.
Wow, that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous indeed. Wow. Yeah, that region, man, it has so much trouble trying to develop themselves. Damn, bro. Very good. Damn, very good, man. This is so good. This is incredibly good. I mean, when it comes down to stuff like this, I wish them the best. I think a lot of these regions, they are basically ethnically Russians, and they feel a very hard connection. You have to understand that when the Soviet Union collapsed, right, a lot of these regions, they were very unstable. There's a huge vacuum. And now that region is like stabilizing, going to their normal peak again. So this is what happened, right? That energy is trying to get back to what it was before. But let me know what you guys see in the comment section below. If you're from Mariupol, let me know in the comment section below. I would love to know that you watch my videos and you have opinions about the situation. I'll see you in the next one.